Making templates and presets for DaVinci Resolve is a pain. Let's change that. I created a tool called the new macro creator, and it allows you to create macros in a fraction of the time. This tool is revolutionary. You're able to grab controls in any order, reorder them as much as you want. You're able to make controls super easily and quickly and easily reorder and organize all of your controls in an easy to use preview. Now, over the past month or so, I've been making a macro for my macro series from start to finish. And in this series, we're making a subscribe button animation that has a really cool UI. We're going to be making a similar animation today. So let me talk about everything we're going to be doing for it. First, the UI. We're going to make something that's similar to and based off of our macro from our previous series, which is also posted the same day today as a full video. So you're able to see the entirety of the macro beginner's guide right here all in one thing. So it's really easy. But if you want to learn how to do the exact same kind of things, but with the new macro creator, then stay watching this video because it's going to get really, really cool. Also, check out a video posted at the same time as these two, where we actually go over and break down different parts of each steps of the process. And I tell you the main differences and how it benefits you to use the new macro creator. So go check out that video as well. To base this off of the original macro from the series, we're going to have a main page that has the transform effects and some other effects for us to toggle on and off with simple buttons. We're also going to include a colors page, which is going to include the mouse colors, like colors, because we're going to be making a like animation instead of a subscribe animation. We're going to be pressing the like button instead. And we can include the like colors, the mouse colors, and we're also going to be including the animations in another page when we finally export this for our final macro. As you can see here, we're also going to include our brand logo at the very top to make sure that this is nice and branded for the final release. Let's actually take a look at what we're doing in the Fusion Comp to make the macro itself. So we can see here, we pop in, we click like, and we do a bunch of crazy animations. So let's take a closer look at that really fast. We can see when we hit the like button, it changes to the filled in version, which is how it looks on your device. And then we also mirror the animation that we have on web pages. And we're actually going to take a look at that here in a little bit. So if we were to play through this really slowly, we can see we get particles that spawn in and just kind of do a burst effect all the way out as we start changing colors. Our little thumb bounces back into place and our mouse goes away. And that is the entirety of the animation. Right now we don't animate out, but we can always zoom out the hand once again after we're done. But that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and start making this. Go ahead and start by putting down a background. We just want to make sure that alpha is set down to 0. This is going to make sure that we can't see the background, but it's still going to be setting our size. Now let's make our like button. We're going to start by actually going in and recording a little segment for this. So let me do that really quickly and I'll show you what we're going to do. All right, so I just pulled up Brave real quick here with the YouTube pulled up. I'm just going to quickly press the like so we can both see what it looks like. When we click it, it does that little bounce in and then it pops back out with colors flashing and with all those fun little confetti pop-ups. We can see on this certain browser, it's turning black. In other browsers, it turns white. It depends on whatever your actual background color is set to. But we're going to be going from a white border to a white filled in, not a black border to black filled in, just so that we can stay consistent. But you can obviously choose whatever you want. And you have the option to change this with the macro. So just like how I did before, let's go ahead and go over here and do Windows button, Shift, and S. It's going to allow you to create a simple recording on Windows. We can come on up here to this little camera icon, and we can set this to a rectangle, which it is by default. And then we can just put a little rectangle around our button. We can keep audio, remove audio, does not matter, but we'll go ahead and cross out both of those, and we'll press start. It gives us a little countdown, but you can't see that. Then we also get to see a nice little border right around here. We can then click this button right here. I'm gonna let it sit for just a little bit so we can get our screenshots. And then I'm just gonna press like, and then we can see the animation really clear. We won't actually need to see the animation to make our macro because I know what it looks like, but in the future, be sure that you're looking at references of the actual thing you want to replicate so that you know you're doing it right. Back in DaVinci, we can see we have our video pulled up, we can play this, and we have our long beginning. We come in here about halfway and we get to see our cool little animation play. So we can see it turns immediately into a color and then it starts doing its little animation, gets up to its peak, sits there for a couple of seconds or maybe just a second, and then comes back down while colors are still changing and while particles are still happening until the particles go away and then the color fades back to normal. Pretty cool. You can also include a number counter, just like how they have on here. If you watch it, it just ticks up, but if you watch this when somebody likes it when you're watching a video, it will actually scroll up sometimes. So that's pretty cool that you might want to replicate sometime for yourself. But let's go ahead and get some screenshots, turn this into a macro. The only screenshot we really need to grab is just the one of the before being clicked version. We're just going to take our screenshots again and just get even closer and just make a little box around it. I don't know if you can see it or not. And then we'll just release. And now we have a new screenshot for us to use. This is perfect. Let's go ahead and open up the folder, and I'm going to put this into the project. Cool stuff. As we can see, it did close our other window. If we go to close that now and come down here, we can see that the other window is closed for sure now, but that is fine. Once again, we know what the animation looks like, so let's just start making it. Let's bring in our screenshot right here, and let's also bring in a background to set the size. This is going to make sure that our mask, as we're tracing over this outline, is going to be scaled correctly, because masks can be a little funky with scaling and fusion if the resolution isn't set right. So always make sure you set your resolution to be the same on the thing you are masking and the mask background if you're doing it like as a shape, which I'll show you here in a second. So we can go ahead and drag the output of this over this to make this merged. Can I say this a few more times? And then we'll see we have it over a black background because this is still just black, which is fine. We're not going to be using this for our final output. Then I'm going to increase this to 5. And if we look, it does look a bit bigger, but I might even increase this to 6, maybe even 7. Because we want this to be pretty big so that our tracing is good enough to where we don't need to really increase the size too much. So that's not going to lose its quality. As we can see, it does look low quality right now, but when we trace it, we're going to have nearly vectored images of it. Well, let's go ahead and drag in a background. This is going to take in the color of the mask. We can go ahead and keep this on black. I'm going to go ahead and make this red so it really stands out. And then we can go ahead and take this polygon mask right here and drag it and place it next to this background that we just made. Connect these together, and we're going to preview these over this. First, we're going to merge this over our first merge right here so that we can see all of these all together. We're not going to see the color from background 1 or from background 3 because we have the mask put into it, and the mask is currently having 0 mask data. So that means there is currently nothing for the background to actually show. So what we're going to do is zoom in a little bit on here, and I'm going to just use middle mouse click, left click, and move my mouse to the right to zoom in. You can also use Alt to zoom in as well, I believe. Maybe Control. Yep, looks like Control works. And then we're just going to start tracing around the center of these lines to make sure all these lines are nice and connected. And any rounded points, we're going to put them on either side of the curve. So we can set that curve right with 2 different anchor points instead of just the single one. So all these look like straight angles. So we're just going to pin one here. We're going to hold shift so it's a solid straight line, and then click here. We're going to release shift, go up to around here, drop it, go down to here and drop it, go down to here, drop it. If you hold shift again, actually up to there, you're going to get this weird everything being selected. So release shift and then just click it and it should connect. Now things may not perfectly be aligned. Feel free to just highlight one of these corners or one of these points and just slightly adjust them to where it fits more how it should. That should work fine for us for right now. Let's go ahead and start rounding these corners. These here at the front are just fine. They don't need to really change anything. These up at the front though, let's go ahead and round these. I'm going to select both of these and then press Shift and S. And it's going to make them rounded. Okay, this is going to do for us for right now. You may want to make this look a little bit better, or even take high resolution versions of these icons and just use them instead of tracing them yourself. So we can go ahead and make this full screen again, and we can see this looks like a pretty good size. Let's then change the background color back to black. And let's make the polygon not solid. And then we're going to see we don't see our colors anymore. Let's make border width a bit bigger, and we're going to start seeing a nice border fill in. We're going to increase it till we cover all the lines. And that then looks pretty swell. We can see that looks a lot more like how it should. We're going to see that it looks pretty good, but it's missing this middle bar. We want to put a bar in here. How do we want to do that? Well, we are going to just use a simple rectangle node because that's going to be the simplest way to get us that bar. And it's going to be really easy for us to invert this later on. We're going to get a rectangle shape right here from the masks, and we're going to input this into the input of the polygon. We're going to see that we don't say anything because this rectangle is currently bigger than the polygon is. We just have to shrink this down and we're going to start to see all these things filling in. And we can already see how this is going to work. By default, we can see that this rectangle is being additive to this other mask. So we can see that it is already making a new shape baked into this other shape. So if we just adjust this right, we just want to adjust it to where we can see that the borders are going all the way to each side, but not quite passing outside the bounds. So just like out to here, and then we got to move it down again, trying to find the center point between the two. But this is going to be how we're going to easily turn this into our other version of this with it filled in, but this bar is then going to be empty instead of it being filled in. And I'll show you that as well. So that makes that super easy. Let's go ahead and delete these nodes in this merge node. And if we preview this, we can see we have a nice successful like button. Pretty cool. All right, and to make sure that this other one looks exactly the same as this one, we're going to just copy these with a Control-C, and then we're going to do an instance paste, which is going to either be a right click, and you're going to find paste instance, or you're going to be doing Control, Shift, and V on a Windows to paste an instance of all three of them. We're going to come into this Polygon 1 instance right here, and we're going to de-instance paint mode. We're going to come in here, right click the name, de-instance, change this to minimum, and then also de-instance solid, and we're going to make it solid again. Let's go ahead and preview this on the first screen, and we can actually see, we only see the line right now. If we come into the line, de-instance invert, and press invert on it, we're going to see we have what we're looking for. We have this final look of the clicked icon. And what we want to do is just change this to white. And now this looks like what we saw at the very beginning of our video. If we look at this one, we're going to see this is our earlier one. We're going to go and roll with this because this is going to be just a one-off video. Not going to be using this in any other projects, but of course, make your assets however you want to make them. All right, that's pretty cool. We have both the clicked version and the unclicked version of our like button. Let's go ahead and start making our mouse now really quick as well. So I'm going to drag in both of these, and just like how we did with our like button, we're also going to set it up with a background so we can get the sizes to be the exact same regardless of what the size of our actual screenshots were. And then we're going to set up our backgrounds for our polygons and get that rolling as well. I'm going to grab each corner. We're not going to grab the borders corners, just the inner corners, because we're going to add the border on later. Make sure you get every corner just right. It does not really matter the exact shape because it's going to look like a mouse regardless. Now, if we just remove everything else, we're going to see that we have a simple mouse shape. Come into here, let's go and do the other one as well. Let's make this full scale, and let's trace this one. Just like how we did with the thumbs up, we're going to be doing either side of each curve, just so we can make sure that we have our curves looking more accurate to how we want them to look like. So we want to be on this side, and then probably going to hold shift and just do this side. Hold shift again, because these are all straight lines. Bam, 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 all the way through. Now that we're here, we're also going to be holding down shift, because this is a nice straight line. But then we're going to place our point right here. Release shift, and we're going to place a point right in between here. And then come on up to here, maybe here. Yeah, well, let's go ahead and place a point roughly right here, just so we have enough room for this curve, and then this extra curve into here. Place a point here, and then here, and here, and then we're just going to come up here and connect these. Now let's go ahead and round out these curves. Okay, I think I'm going to go ahead and go with this one. We did a little bit of curve changes, but most of the time I just did a Shift S and it just turned it into a simple curve, and that worked. You can go and remove all of these extra nodes, pile these on top of each other just like before, and there we go. Now both of these should be sitting right in the center, but without any borders. So let's go ahead and merge these over each other. In fact, let's not merge them, my bad. Let's go ahead and add a dissolve node just so that we can have that ready to go. We're going to plug in either one of them into it first and then the other one. Now let's preview this and let's give them both a border. So if we just come into here, and I'm going to put in my simple border I made in the last video. You can watch that to learn it. Watch that again down in the description. It's not really the last video, it's just the video where I made the partner macro to this one. And we're just going to type in border to get my simple border plugin, which is super easy. This is not available for sale. It is just something that I made super quick and easy and also taught you how to make. We're going to preview this now, and we're going to see that it's a black border, so we're not going to be able to see it. We want to change this to white and just make this size much smaller. We really just want to fill in between the fingers, and that's pretty much it. We can see if we switch between the two with this dissolve node, we're going to see the border also snaps to the other hand. And we're going to see as we slide between them, we're going to see a little bit of border funkiness going on, but it's not too big of a worry because this is going to happen in a split second. I'm going to set the dissolve to be about on halfway. And then we're also going to just adjust where these are placed. But we're just going to preview our simple border, and we're going to put our mouse halfway between the two of them. And we're going to do a little bit of moving so that they align a little bit better. If we zoom in really well here, we're going to see that this is the tip of the hand, and then this is the tip of the cursor. We want to align those two so that they're pretty similar. Let's just make sure that we have the positions right. Yep, looks like that's the position of the actual cursor. We're going to come into here and add some XF nodes, which is just transform. We're going to add one to both of them and then just slightly adjust where they are, trying to keep them around where the center is. Which if we right click in this space and go down to here to guides and show guides, you're going to see a simple middle point. But if you don't see that, go into here and make sure that you can see center right there. And then this is roughly where the center is. So we just want to roughly keep them in the center, which maybe they need to go up and left a little bit. Both of them do, I'd say. So now if we switch between these really quickly, we're going to see it looks like they're just snapping into the same spot and they're still pointed at the same exact thing. We're going to go ahead and right click, remove our guides now. We're fine with that. Now let's go ahead and add our dissolve to our thumbs up as well. So we're going to add a DISS to this, connect them up in either way that you want. They both have a background node, so they're both going to be set up to use the default options for the timeline. But let's go ahead and change that really quick. If we go into the backgrounds, we can come over here to image and just uncheck auto resolution. This is going to make sure that no matter what timeline you're on, these polygons are not going to be all sorts of messed up, because this is very common. Polygons don't like it when they're being used on a timeline that they weren't originally made for, or at least the resolution they weren't made for. Like I mentioned earlier, polygons are really weird, and masks in general are really weird with sizing. So just make sure you get the sizing right, and you should be okay. These both are black backgrounds for our mouse. We're just going to delete this other background, and we're going to do an instance of background 5. So copy it, do a shift control and V to print it, and then we're going to connect up the inputs and outputs again so it all looks right. And then as we switch back and forth, we're going to see it all looks just like how it used to. Perfect. Go ahead and connect all of these out to the output so we can see everything all on the same screen really nicely. Let's go ahead and switch this to the before being clicked mode, and let's go ahead and add a transform node to our hands so we can move them around like a cursor. What we want to do is come to here, and before we start adding anything else to it, I know I'm jumping around a little bit. I'm trying to get through this as fast as we can. We're taking up a lot of time. Let's go ahead and add in a background node to set the color. We're going to get rid of the merge that it creates, and we're going to connect in the output of this dissolve straight into the actual background mask input. And then we're going to take this into the output right there. All right, we're going to take the output to the input of the merge one, and we're going to see it's set to a new color now. It's set to this black. If we change this to white, we're going to see it's set to a different color. This is also then what we're going to be using to animate the changing of the colors as our animation plays. Next thing we're going to go ahead and get set up is going to be our particle system. We're fine with how this looks for right now. We're going to leave this as is. We're going to move this over to the right, move this over to the left, and we're actually going to create two particle systems in here. One particle system is going to be for our poof effect with our sparklers, and then another particle system is going to be for just stringy lines that are going to be floating away as well. These are both really easy to set up. So if we go and start making our shapes in here, which we're just going to start making stuff with simple rectangles, because this is going to be just fine for what we need. Then we're also going to grab a S render. Both of these are not available usually on this default bar right here. If I look at the defaults, we're going to see we just have these previews right here. This should be what you see whenever you load into DaVinci for the first time if you're on DaVinci 19. I have a custom toolbar, so that's why I have all these set up. You can add these by dragging the nodes themselves directly into this up here, and it will just add the preview really quickly for you. That's what I like to do, so it's really easy to grab certain things. If we preview this, we're going to see just a simple rectangle, and if we make this itty bitty and round out those corners a bit, we're going to have a capsule-like thing, which is kind of what we're looking for here. Let's maybe make it even a little bit thinner so it feels more like a shooting thing. And then we're also going to decrease the size a little bit so it doesn't feel quite so massive. And I'm also just going to move it up to the top up here so we have room at the bottom for what we're going to do. We're coming to here before the ES render, and we're just going to add a duplicate. This is going to be an S duplicate node, and we're going to set our axis mode from origin relative to absolute, and it's going to give us pivot point. We're going to set the pivot down here, roughly in the center of where a circle would be of these little lines. And then we're just going to start setting the Z rotation to the number of copies. So if we come into here, right click, set expression, and we're going to do copies, or we're going to do 360 divided by copies. As we add more and more, we're going to see that more and more are added in here, and they're evenly distributed all throughout our circle. And we can't see the entire circle here right now. If we preview the media out, or if we preview the render out, we're going to see that the entire thing is kind of being cropped. We can change this by just either changing the rectangle size right here, or after the S duplicate, we can come into here and type in XF. It's going to automatically fill it in with the shape one. And we can just start scaling this down. Let's expression these two things together so that X and Y move at the same pace. And we're just going to make these smaller and then also move them up so that they're more in the center. And this is now our template for our burst. Now, how do we want to make this actually expand out and disappear? This is also really easy. If we come into our S rectangle, we can animate the Y offset to move up to make it the illusion of all of them bursting out, since all of these are just duplicates of the same rectangle. If you were to use a regular duplicate node instead of the S duplicate node, you'd also be able to do time offsets and have slight time variations on when those shoot out. But in our case, we're not going to do that, and it also looks a little bit cleaner this way, so we're going to do it our way. We're going to add a P emitter and a P render. This is going to make sure that this is visible on our output. Let's come over here in P emitter over to style. We're going to change the style from point to bitmap. That's going to give us a new input down here that we can actually take our output from S render 1, drop it into the input of the P emitter. Now if we were to preview the render on another screen, we're going to see it's in 3D. Let's make this 2D really quick, and we're going to see we can start to see these lines forming, which is obviously going to be our little balls and sparkles. Let's come into here to the first point, to the first frame, and on P emitter, we're going to come into here to controls and just change the number starting at 10. And then the next frame in, we're just going to press the right arrow. We're going to make the next frame have 0. This is going to make sure that only 10 of them actually spawn. After we hit 100 frames, we're going to see that they all die. That's because of lifespan being set to only 100. We can set this all the way up to max. This is going to make sure that regardless of what we do, it's generally going to be fine. We're going to come up here to region and set the size to be a rectangle instead of a sphere. And we're going to just increase the width and height to kind of cover the surrounding area of our little checkbox here. We can maybe translate this up a little bit so it's more centered. We can maybe decrease this number from 10 to maybe like a 5, because we don't really want a whole lot of these spawning, because they're going to end up being a lot for our little bit of particles that we're actually going to have already. So if we come into here now, if we animate this going up, we're going to see, if we look on the left, we're going to see all of those expanding out and then disappearing slowly, and super easy. And they all kind of have different variations because of the different placements inside the rectangular comp. Now, if we come into here and just add this into here, we're going to see, we can see those little particles, sparkles right there. Let's go ahead and change our P emitter to change some colors about this. So we're going to do color controls, color variants, and we're going to start changing these colors right here. This is going to allow us to have some slight different colors over all the different kind of instances of the same things. So each of these instances are going to have slightly different colors. If we change up high, we're start to see a little bit of red hint. If we change down green, we're going to see it turns things a little bit more purplish, pinkish. And if we increase blue, we're going to see some things maybe turn a little bit more blue, but if we turn it down, we're going to see things turn a little bit more reddish. And if we were to increase green as well, we're going to see things become a little bit yellowish. And that's, I think, a pretty good color for us to stop that on. You kind of want to adjust these as much as you want to make them look good. You can adjust them minutely all over the place, but it's kind of up to you to make it look how you want it to look. Let's go ahead and add our other particles in here really quick, which is going to be another simple little rectangle. But it's going to be even easier this time because we don't actually need to put it through a duplicate, but we do need to put it through a bender, which is also very different. The bender node is part of the 3D shape system, the default one, not the USD system. And you're able to bend things with a bender node really easily in it, and then export that out with the render node, and then put it into something else. So what we're doing here is making a shape, putting it through the 3D system, out of the shape system, into 3D, and then into particles. So we're going through 3 of the different systems in Fusion, all with this one little operation right here. So we're going to make a rectangle. We're going to make sure that the width is much smaller. We're going to make sure that the height is quite a bit smaller. And then we're going to just make sure that the corners are nice and rounded, maybe like this. Looks good. Let's go ahead and then add our S render so we can just have that as an actual image. And then we're going to take this into an image plane. So if we go and type in image, we can go ahead and look for image plane 3D, where you can see it auto connects that into there. And then we also need to get a shape renderer 3D for this as well. And now we're going to see we have our shape on our background in an image, really nice and easy. Now after image plane, if we move renderer 3D down and go ahead and do shift space and add in a bender node, we are going to be able to adjust this as much as we want. If we view this renderer 3D, let's first change our angle to be 90 because it's going to by default try to bend things on this axis, which it won't really work because it's going to bend things like this instead of bending things like this. So we want things to bend more on this axis so that they bend like this. If that makes sense. Kind of makes sense. Let me know. Then we can go ahead and move amount, and we're going to see we're going to start bending. But we're going to start having these weird artifacts happening all over this. Why are there artifacts, you might be asking? That's because we need to actually go into the image plane now and increase the subdivisions to make sure that we have enough actual vertices to bend. So if we increase subdivisions now, we're going to see our line looks a little bit nicer. All right, we're going to go ahead and add in our particle system. So we'll add in the P emitter again and add in the P renderer. Merge this over this, and let's set up our P emitter. It's going to be very similar to our other one. So once again, bitmap, connect in the output. We're going to go to our first frame, make sure that 5 spawn, keyframe that, go in 1 frame, change that to 0. And now we're going to see, we can have, can't really see them, but if we preview our renderer, we can see we have 5 little guys chilling right there. Now if we also come into our P emitter and look for rotation, we can actually change some stuff about rotation. Let's change rotation a little bit so that they're a little bit pointed in a different way. And let's also increase Z variance, which is rotation Z variance. And we're going to see things start getting a little bit more randomized. Let's just increase this quite a bit so things are a little bit more randomized all together. And that should be okay. Let's go into here to our P emitter and change our style to once again set our color variance. We're going to be a little bit different on this one with some variance things changed all throughout. There we go. We have a nice green and a nice red for our particles. That looks really nice. Hopefully that stands out really well on our background. Cool. Let's also go into our P emitter and just change our region to be a rectangle and just change it to fit over this thumbs up really nicely. There we go. We can see that we have the exact positions of the other particles. What we want to do is go into P emitter, go into controls, and just reseed a couple of times to get a little bit of a random particle system so we don't have them all either in the same area or on top of our other particles. So something like this is going to do. All right, let's go and start animating all of this to be used for our macro. To start, we're going to go ahead and actually animate up our little thumbs up guy right here. So we're going to start by over here. Right, we're going to click on the merge one or whatever merge name you have there. We're going to add a transform node, and this node is just going to scale us in just like that. So if we remember back from our other video, we're going to be using anim utility. You can get anim utility off of Reactor now. I'm going to come into here. I'm going to be pressing A because this is my hot quick open up for the macro or for the script. You can get this from Resolve Essentials, which just opens up the hotkey manager for Fusion. We're going to be able to search for any control name we want. We're going to be wanting to animate the size. So type in size and just look for the correct name and ID. Type it in. We can go and keep the name of the node here, or we can rename this to make it super easy for us. I think we are going to. So we're just going to set this to thumb first size. Really easy. In fact, we might even just change this to thumb scale. And this is just going to tell us this is the thumb scaling in and out when we open it up. So this is really nice. This is going to be really easy for when we make stuff afterwards with the new macro creator. Paste it. It's going to be loading in for a second. We can minimize this to get out of our way. Let's come on over here to the actual anim utility. And if we play through this, we're going to see over a second, it's just going to zoom up. Super nice. We can go ahead and just convert these into seconds because we don't really want to change these at all. But this is then going to just set it up to where we animate in, hold, and then we're going to animate back out once we're done. Nice. I'd say we're going to start animating in the mouse at around frame 10. That's a little bit before halfway for our other animation. We might even do it a little bit earlier. Let's go ahead and just say 7 for a little bit of safety. To animate in this animation to come in, let's go ahead and first set this over to our original cursor, and we're also going to set the pivot point to be the exact tip of this. So let's move pivot point out from its center so we can't grab the center point. We're going to grab pivot and put it roughly right on the tip of that, and then as we spin this and scale it, we're going to see it's going to go into that point and out of it, spin around it. It's going to be really simple to set up animations this way. Now we can animate our angle and size, and this is going to allow us to quickly make an intro for this animation. So if we go ahead and do A to bring up our little menu again, and we can go ahead and just type in size, which is again how we did it before, but this time we're going to make this mouse, and we're going to say scale. Again, this is going to let us know this is coming in and going out. Okay, sorry, I just had to restart DaVinci because there was this weird bug. I'm assuming it was a hung process of some kind, even though I didn't find one on my task manager, but that's okay. Restarting DaVinci allowed this to work. For some reason, it wasn't finding the node in the comp that it was clearly selecting, so it was really weird, but it's working now. So let's go ahead and we can close this now, or we can go ahead and add in our angle one as well. So we can just type in angle, add in plain angle, and we're going to make this thumb, and we're going to call this not angle, but spin. This is going to tell us this is our spin animation. If I can just type in spin correctly, paste that in, and we can see it did connect up to angle just fine. Now we can come into here and close out of that, open up our modifiers, and now we can see we have some stuff going on here. You might see scale in here twice. Don't worry about it. It doesn't matter that much. It just means that one of them was created in the past and it just wasn't added to anything, but it should be fine. Now, if we were to play through this, we can see we have it scaling down and up. We're just fine. Let's make this actually start on frame 7 like we said before. So make this frame 7 and make this frame 7 so when it leaves, it's also happening in the same like staged order. We can go ahead and play this now. We can see this one happens a little bit later, just like how we wanted it to. Now we can come into here to controls, and we want to make our first number here probably 360, so it is a whole spin. And as we play through it, we're gonna already see it's gonna do a whole spin and dance. Let's go ahead and set our numbers for these also to be 7. And now if we play through this, we're going to see it comes in really nicely. Let's go ahead and start adjusting these timings because I feel like the timings are a little bit too long. So let's convert this back into seconds, and let's actually change from length of 24. Let's only change this to be maybe 12 for half of a second for both of these. And we're also going to do that same time change for our transform 3 here for our thumbnail, or I see what I did wrong. I called these thumbs. There's an easy way to resolve this. If we just delete this node and then close resolve and reopen it, those modifiers should go away. Play through this now, and we're going to see things look a lot snappier and things look a little bit nicer. We can then, of course, change the angle or change the curve of the spin. We want to change the out curve maybe to be a little bit more elasticy, bounce back a little bit. Maybe let's change the first one to expo. Let's just see what the mouse looks like now. We can see a very, very snappy, very, very fast, which may be just how you want for this animation. We can see the thumb comes in just fine, but then the cursor comes in a little bit later. Let's delay this even a tiny bit more because that feels like it's too fast. Now we want to animate the center point from moving from here up to here with a little bit of a curve in there. So we want to go ahead and open up our script again, type in center, and when we add center, we want to go ahead and change the name to mouse center real quick. Paste it in there, and if we go into modifiers, we're going to see origin has taken the actual numbers that we were using. For some reason, angle has adapted stuff as well. I don't know why angle has done that, but we can go ahead and close this. These are the numbers that we had in here before. So we can see our mouse has not actually changed But if we were to move distance around, which we can't at the moment because it's currently animated, but if we were to go into the controls for this and move distance around, we're going to see we are able to slide it left and right. If we want to change our angle on that, we come into here, change angle, and we can make this 90, for example, to move us up and down instead. What we're going to end up doing is we're going to be animating both angle and this other control to move it around super realistic. So we just want to move this from our main point over. So we're just going to move this not down. We're going to change this back to being on 0. We're going to move this over to here. And that should be fine for us. We also then want to come into here, open up our search again, and we're going to type in down here, mouse underscore center underscore angle. This is so that we're able to like really accurately figure out what everything is. This is the angle of the center on the mouse. Super easy. Paste that in. It's going to tell us we did not add it to any control, so please use the connection that we have built in, which is just your name connect to me .connection. Super cool. If we then come into here to our vector, right click on angle. If we come down here to connect to and find the only thing that's really called to connect to me that has the names we want, go down here to connection, and we're going to get a new animation really nicely. And if we play through this, we're going to see we're just kind of moving over as we play. But if we offset this to be a little bit later, so let's see, when do we stop spinning in? Let's say 18. So let's go ahead and start moving at maybe frame 20. So let's go ahead and set 20 into here. Now, if we were to play through this, we're going to see it has a nice gradual move. Pretty good. I feel like that is a little bit long, so let's change it from being a full 24 seconds to maybe being a good only 6 seconds to move over there. Or 6 frames, sorry. So now if we were to zoom it in, it's going to move over really fast. Let's change this up to 10. So there's a little bit more of easing room in there. Come on down here to the angle, and we're just going to adjust the angle. We want it to start on 0, but then we want it to slowly go to a different number. If we go ahead and change this number up to be higher or lower, if we change it to be lower, we're going to see it's going to start moving us up. I'd say probably -5 is actually pretty good, but we can maybe even go -10 or -15. And that's going to put us like in the center. If we were to go through it, we can see we have it moving up like that. But if we were to look at the angle as we're going through this, look at this angle right here. This is actually the angle this is controlling. So if we play through it, we're going to see the angle slowly is moving until we actually get to 24 frames, and then it stops, and then this just moves to that point. It's not what we want. We want to move these, instead of being 24 frames, let's go ahead and make them 10 frames as well, so that they're a nice gradual move along with the mouse move. And we're going to set these to start moving at the same time as this. So at 20 frames, we're going to start moving these from the other spot to the new spot. So let's go ahead and take a look at this, and we're going to see the gradual mouse moving up. Just like that, it looks really nice. Let's find our point where we start to hover over the actual button, which is going to be this frame right here, and we're going to come into dissolve and set up an animation for this as well. We want to hover over this, find the ID, we get to see it's called mix. And then in here we can go ahead and call this mouse, either mix, or we can call this DISS for dissolve. Put that in there, close it, wait for it to close, and we can go ahead and make this either be 1 or 0 by default, and then make this 1 or 0 as we change it. We can go ahead and make this a 1, because we're going to be wanting to switch directly into the new one as soon as we get to it. So we want to change these both down to 1. Actually, we're only going to do one of these because the other one's not going to actually be playing. But we want to just find that frame again where we actually are hovering over it, which is this one. So at frame 26, we want to immediately change to the correct one. So I'm actually going to do it on frame 25, and frame before this is going to be, if we go back, it's going to be this one. And the next frame is this one when we're actually hovering over this. Just how we need it to look. So now if we were to play through this, we're going to see it looks like we are about to click on this button. Perfect. I'm going to finish up the animations really quickly because this is just kind of taking a long time because I'm explaining things too much. So really quickly, let me finish this up and we can hop into making this into a macro. So now if we were to play through this, we're going to see we have a nice clean comp. We play it, bam, click, and we have all of the particles happen really fast, and it all goes away nice. We can obviously then add more to this. We're going to go ahead and add in our effects, and our master transform node really quick. So this is our main, and we're going to do XF to make it really clear. I'm going to go and set this name to be mouse colors, so I have everything labeled, and then this one's going to be thumb colors, and it's not going to allow us to put spaces in there, so don't even bother. So that works for us. And we can also then just grab the 2p emitters, but we know that the 2p emitters have the colors on them, so we don't have to worry about that. Let's go ahead and add a multi-merge into here so we can add our effects on. And I'm just going to be using a shadow, which is just going to be a drop shadow and a glow special, just those two. So when we add them in here, they look really clean. As we play the animation, we're going to see this looks actually pretty nice. Okay, this is all we need to add for us for now. In the other video, we showed off adding a bunch of other controls and stuff to make these things function, but we're actually going to be making this with the new macro creator really quick and easy. So to actually use the new macro creator, we have to do something to set this up really quickly first. If we do a search, we can do alpha divide or whatever node we want. We can make this a node. Okay, let's try this again. There's one more thing we have to do before we can actually use the new macro creator. We need to have one node that we want to designate as the controls node. This is where all controls are going to be created whenever we use the new macro creator. You can add a new node for this or use an existing node. You can use a background node. You can use any node that doesn't have any particular purpose. Or what I'm going to show you is using another node like the alpha divide node. This node is essentially just the settings page, which doesn't do much of other stuff besides maybe changing the stuff that passes through it. We're going to go ahead and set this node to be passed through, which we did with Control P or with this little tick up here. I'm going to change the name with either a right click and finding rename or doing F2 and just changing this to say controls so it's nicely labeled for us in the future. Well, that looks perfect. Now we can go and start selecting everything. And by default, you may be thinking, okay, I have to select everything one by one to make sure it's nice and organized to how I want the controls to show up. Not quite. I would still suggest figuring out how you want the controls to show up. Maybe write down how you want the labels, pages, and everything to be laid out. But we don't have to do anything special in this comp to make this work. We have to just select everything all at the same time. And then whatever node is your controls node, reselect that once with nothing else being held down. And that's going to activate it as the node in red or the active node. You're going to come into here. You can open up Macro Creator and it's going to load in all of your nodes. Give it a second. And now you can see a bunch of cool stuff. You can grab this side and drag this out to increase the width of this, but that is going to be it for actually adjusting how things are sized. You can't really adjust this, it'll just adjust that side again. However, you can press this shrink button to make it just this little window that you can drag around and put off to the side. Or you can minimize the window to bring it down to the very bottom to get it completely out of your way so that you, if you have the ability to, you can just reopen this whenever you're ready to actually use it. Let's go ahead and go over the main layout. First off, on the left, we can see we have all of these are just the nodes we have in here. And we can see all of the modifiers. And if they were groups, we'd also see a group. We can see we have a how-to right here. It just gives you a little bit of what you have to do to use this. Just a little bit of a snippet in case you don't know. And also here's main input. So you can select whatever input, which is these little triangles, that you want the user to have control over to connect into if you like you're in Fusion and this is a Fusion node you're making, or you can use this for a couple of other things like transitions and effects. You can have those as well. Main outputs, it'll auto select whatever is selected to your media out node. So it's going to be our multi-merge output. If you have multiple media out nodes, multiple outputs will be selected. So make sure you have the right one selected, but it won't just select any output not connecting to anything because that's dumb. I have the newest version of 1.0.1, which also allows you to hide the how-to section, which just gives you more room for these two boxes right here, which is really handy. Thank you to somebody on my Discord for suggesting that. Before we start adding nodes into here, I just want to show you some other features. If we come on up here to add, we can go ahead and open up a controls editor. This is made by Tita from the We Suck Less forum. They're an awesome person. Go check them out. You can donate to them right here. This is also available in the free version, so if you have that, please donate to them. They're awesome, and this is an awesome tool. That's why I chose to borrow it. I did ask them, don't worry. You can go ahead and set your names and everything. I'm going to be making a whole video going over this for my tutorials in a few weeks. So wait for that. When that comes out, that'll be fully explained. But we can see you can add a bunch of different controls super easily with this. And I'll show you how to use this in a little bit. We can come up here to add, and we can add a bunch of other things like tabs or pages, images for inside of controls or in the headers of your macro. You can add separation lines, labels, buttons, checkboxes, space, all sorts of really cool stuff. And we can come on up here to edit, and we can edit the expressions on nodes. I think right now by default, mine is currently selected to only show expression. Let me see if it's fast. When you're finished loading in, you're going to see that you have a bunch of different things on the left and right side over here. If you have any controls inside of the preview, then you're going to see some controls over here. These correspond with controls actually on nodes down here, but you're able to edit these specially so that they're easy access in case you just want to edit stuff you have already on the macro. But if you come on over here, you can see we have every control that's possibly on these modifiers and nodes. So you can easily modify any of these with an expression. Or find things with expressions already with show only expressions right here. Check this and it will just reload everything really quickly to show you only the ones with expressions already on it. Wait a little while for this to load. And we're going to see as we scroll down, we're going to see a few things in here. And as we look at the S duplicate, we're going to see that we have our expression for our copies right here. If we click it, we can edit this and then update the control afterwards. And it'll update this preview as well. And we can see all of our other things we made earlier today. Super cool. And these obviously have some stuff in there. Don't worry about that. And we also have this same sort of thing for button code and text. By default, it only shows things that can accept button code or text. So it only shows buttons, which is currently only on the modifier, and it will show them if they have code in them or not. But obviously if they have code in them, you'll be able to click on them. It formats them for you and you're able to easily edit them nicely, quickly, and everything, blah, 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 blah. And then update the control and everything, and it looks really nice. You can come on up here to text, load in the text, and it gives us the same thing, but only things that have our text edit controls, which also includes the comments and render scripts down here as well. And a few other things for a few other things as well. Like a few hidden things you can't see. Okay, let's finally get to the meat and potatoes of this actual walkthrough. Stick you on up here, and let's start adding things as controls. We're going to see we have a main page, a colors page, and we also then want to add an animations page. We want to add the transform node that we added in here, and then we also want to add an effects section right down here for the two effects we added in near the end. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. Make sure you have reselected your controls node because it can just select a random node sometime. Go ahead and make sure you can open it up. Let's go ahead and start adding stuff in. So first we want to add in the pages. So by default, if you've ever made a macro before, you know that you're forced to have a controls page and a settings page as long as there's any controls on the macro. A little bit annoying, but it also kind of makes sense. We're able to remove that really easily with this tool by just adding a tab in one of these first three slots. So we can quickly add that. But first, there's something else with the UI. Did you notice? We also have an image in there. And like I said earlier, we can add images in either the controls or as the header on a macro. And if we saw that earlier, which I'll show a little picture on the screen, it is in the header of the macro. So let's go ahead and add that. Up here in add, we can come on down here to image, select our image, but we can also see the ideal size for any images being used in this. 355 is a good width, but then 123 or higher is always a good size. Smaller is also a decent size too, but the higher it is, the more space you take out from the controls. So there's also something to look out for there. We can do select image and it just brings up to a cert. And I'm gonna go ahead and find my logo. Okay, there we go. Wow, look at that. I found it within the package of stuff you get from whenever you buy the new macro creator. Wow, you get a whole bunch of stuff like free extras like Anim Utility and the installer for the light version of this software as well. You also get example macros. Super cool stuff. If you want to get the full version, you get all these freebies. You know, I'm just saying. If we're coming here to images, we can go ahead and select FPS logo. And we can see it is the ideal width, but then the height is just a little bit short, but that's fine. We can go ahead and press open. Brings in the path right there, tells us the name of it. We can then actually make a preview name, which please add a preview name or else you're going to break stuff. I don't think I have a way to prevent this right now from my breaking stuff, so please add one. I'm going to add this in the future. FPS logo, and we're going to make this a header image just by doing this checkbox right there. Add that. We're not going to see it add any controls to the controls node because making it a header image makes it store the information and then put that back into the macro as it's exporting. So we're going to look at that later. Now we can come up here and add a tab to separate things out. And this is going to be the main tab. And we're going to also then set an icon for it. You can set an icon out of a bunch of different things, but I just have these presets because they're nice and easy to understand and they're familiar to Fusion because these are actually Fusion icons. We can go ahead and hover over these to see what each of them actually mean and what each of them actually do. But we're just going to come over here and find the XY path because this is going to be a general idea of like, this is where the transform controls are. Super easy stuff. So let's go ahead and press XY path. You're not going to actually see anything tell you that's what's selected, but when you select it, it just stores that data internally. And we can also remove the settings tab. If you check this, then this page will no longer appear, which, as I mentioned before, is a permanent fixture for all sorts of macros. Super annoying. There's an easy fix for it just with this little checkbox. You can then press add, or you can also add a tooltip, which if you hover over any of the pages that have tooltips, it'll just tell you what that little information is, either whether that be the full name of the macro or whether it be something else. We can press add and we can see it just fills in our slots nicely. Now we want to add in a label to separate out the transform from the effects. So label, we're going to add word transform, and we can highlight this with HTML stylizer. We can make it bold to make it stand out more, and we're also going to then change the color with this little button here, and we're just going to choose a nice happy color. Maybe a nice blue, just like that. Maybe a nice brighter blue. How about that? There we go. And that looks nice. Let's go ahead and make this a nest, which is going to make it have that drop down arrow, and then this number is going to be the amount of controls it is hiding, which is just the amount of controls that are hidden whenever the drop down is closed. And by default, a good middle number is always 5 because you don't know if you're going to be too low or too high, but generally you're never too high, generally you're always too low. So it's always a good place to start. You can always make this 0, make this 10, whatever you really feel like is a good middle ground, but fill this in with something so you don't confuse the code. And there we go. We can then change default to be 1. Default, when it's 0, makes the label closed. When it is 1, it makes the label open. So you're actually able to see the controls. We can come on into here and look for main XF. You can obviously look through it with your eyes, but I'm going to do it the fancy way and just type in main. We're going to get main XF right there. It could take a second to load in things, so if it doesn't bring up the right stuff right away, let it sit for a second, and then you'll eventually start getting in other results. We can also search in here. This is a transform node, so let's go ahead and look for the transform page. So if we just type in trans, it's going to take us straight over to the transform nest right there on the controls page. If we look, we see a bunch of controls have the same colors that you're seeing in our preview up here. That's because all of the controls you have with colors in here, you can make up in here. So we can see anything that has this little yellow line, like controls right here, then you know this is going to be a tab. And anything with this color, well, in our label right here, is going to be a label or a nest. So if we just come into here and we want to grab everything down to edges, we're going to select once, hold down our left click, and then drag down to edges and release. This is going to group select this entire section, allowing us to bulk add right into the preview. And as we can see, we actually visibly get to see what's inside of this label. If we count, we can see we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more to go. And if we see we have 5 here, so we know that our next number that this needs to say is 11. Let's go ahead and make this 10 just to show you, yes, it's accurate. So if we make this 11 now, it's going to be hiding the 11th control. Super nice. Now I will say you can add controls that already exist on macros, or you can add controls that already exist on nodes. So if you say you want this label right here, you can attempt to add it, but it may come in wrong and you may have to adjust it manually afterwards. Okay, super cool. Let's go ahead and add in another label really quick for our effects. So we're going to make this just say effects again, and we're going to make this bold again and change our label color. We're going to make this maybe a little bit more of a greenish color this time, since we had a blue last time. Go and add that, and we're going to make this a nest again, and once again, we're going to make this 5. This may not be 5 when it's done. In fact, let's go ahead and make this 0, and I'll explain this in a second. But I'll go ahead and make this 0, so it doesn't actually hide anything whenever we add new controls into here. But I will go ahead and make this 1, so it's open by default. So I made this label 0, because we need to add labels to this. And the reason why we have it 0 is because if we add a label to a label and then try to add things into that label and like change the number of how many controls it's hiding, you'll just crash resolve. And I don't know why. So we currently need to avoid that by doing some manual moving around. So we know we want this to be the effects section, but how do we want this actually to work? We want it to be a hide and show behavior, just like how we had in our macro before. This is where things can get a little bit confusing, and you may just need to be doing this yourself to actually get a hang of it. So we need to come up into here, add another label, and we're going to make this the shadow underscore hider, and this is going to be for the enable function. And we're not going to add any styling to this because this is actually going to be not visible. If we come into here and make this a nest, we're going to make this only hide one because it's going to be the button. And then we're going to uncheck visible. What this is going to do is it's going to make the IC visible tag false. So it's not going to be visible on any page or the macro. When you open the label, the contents, meaning the controls that are stored within it, will be visible, but the label will not. If the label is closed, both the label and those controls are gone, and that space gets filled with the controls below it, which means you can easily hide and show controls really nicely with this. And let me show you how it's done. So we have this set up now. We have it setting up for enabling the hider. That we can see we did not get it added to this other label because it has 0. Good. That's what we want. Let's go ahead and add a button now, and we're not going to add any code into this button. We're just going to add the button itself. And this button is going to be enable shadow. We're not going to change the width because 1 by default is what it is. Once again, not going to change anything there. Add that now, and this is added to this label because it had a label hiding of 1. Good. Let's add in another label. Make this one shadow underscore hider underscore disable. We're going to nest it. And this time we're going to hide 5 because I don't quite know how many controls we actually want to hide. We want to make this invisible as well. And we're going to make this hide more controls because this is going to hide the button and the actual sliders and controls for the effect. So we're going to add this now. And we're going to make this one 1 because we want it to be on by default because that's what the nodes are. If the nodes are on by default, you want this to be open by default, since we want to then have the user be able to disable the effect when it's on, because it is by default, it's on by the start, to then have this button show after they click the disable button. So if we come up here, add button, disable shadow, don't change anything else, just press add. Now we can add in some things for our shadow effect. So if we type into here, just shadow, we'll get in drop shadow, add in our main controls for it. Sometimes you may get the actual input name. This is the actual triangle name. I don't know why it's here. It's a little bit weird. Sometimes you'll have bugs like that. You can ignore things that don't actually make sense to you. Look at the node that you want to get the controls from. Look for the controls you want and then take those. Don't just guess. So we want from shadow strength down to blur. We don't really need the colors. So we can just grab those with a drag, bulk add those, and it looks like those are actually the correct amount. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Perfect. So reselect our controls nodes. We have that ready. And now let's go ahead and start adding stuff for the glow. We're going to add a label, and where this one's going to be glow underscore hider underscore enable. And then we're just going to go into here and search for glow. Add in the glow controls we need. Look for the controls page here. Let's look at the glow node. What do we really want to grab? Probably the lock X and Y and get those down here. So let's go down here, lock X and Y. We want to grab that. We want glow size. We want X or we want Y glow. We don't need num passes because that's probably, is that part of this? No, that's not really, that's not something that we need. We want to add glow. If we hold down control and click a different one of these controls, it'll actually leave a space between the other controls we have selected. And we can do that same method to get blend clone right here, and then just bulk add those, and those are going to add just how we want. We can add one more to this to get blend in there. So there we go. And that looks really nice. Now let's add another page for colors. So come up here to add, we're going to add a tab. We're going to call it colors. We're going to add the icon, and we're going to choose a colorful icon like this with a nice wheel on it. Pretty nice. Add that. Keep remove settings tabs on because it's just going to save this setting for each time you reopen this comp. And then add that in there. And now we're going to add in the controls for the mouse and the thumb. So first we're going to do the mouse. I'm not going to add any special coloring to these, but we're just going to call them mouse colors so that they're easy for us to find. We're going to add 5 controls into there. And also really quick, we also want to take a look at this. This needs to get changed because we need to actually add in things to this. So let's count in how many controls we have down here and then add this number into there. But let me show you a little secret as to what you have to do, because it's a little bit weird. We can see we have 1. Let's go ahead and start with just doing 1. And if we add it, we're going to see this number jumps up to saying 2. That's because it's also counting the contents inside of this, because the finished product has to say how many controls, even inside of the other controls, like the inside of the other nest, are inside of this other nest. If that doesn't make a lot of sense to you, please just try out some more macro stuff, work with some macros, try out some different UI techniques, and you'll understand. I'll also be releasing videos to explain these things in more detail as time goes on. So if you're a little bit lost, I'm sorry, but I'll get to that stuff as I get there. It's just, there's a lot to get into. We can go ahead and start adding other controls into here. So if we up this up to 3 now, it adds in the next set of labels in here. And if we have this up to 8 now, it won't add anything in because the math can be a little bit weird. We have to add this until it starts adding stuff in again. So we can see this is added in there now. Then we can add this up to 10. We can see it didn't add anything, make it 11, and then it adds it. It's a little bit finicky, but you just have to kind of move it up until it does add it and then stop adding stuff in there. And then this is actually now adding in the correct amount of stuff. But let's recount everything to make sure that this number is correct, because the numbering can still be wrong. So if we see we have 1 here, 5 here, 1 here, and 6 here. Let's count these and count the labels at the same time. So this is 2, this is 6, 7, and this is 8, 9, and this is 9 plus 6, which makes this should then be 15. So if we change this out to be 15 and we can see nothing happens, that's good. That's what we want. So now all of these are going to be hidden inside of it, and then none of these are going to be effects. Perfect. It's just a little bit funky how you have to do it right now, and I'm going to be changing this in the future. I'm sorry if it doesn't always work. I'm working on it. Let's come into here and actually grab our mouse colors. So if we actually type in mouse, we're going to see a bunch of stuff comes up, but more importantly, we have mouse color. We can, of course, add everything from the background color stuff. So if we go into here and do color, what's this called? And we're going to see we come down here to the color page with a bunch of stuff on it. We just want the first set of actual controllable things, which is just the top left section right here. We don't need top right or any of these other sections or types or anything. We really just need the basic colors. So we just need to add these 4, bulk out of that, and that looks really nice. We can change this to say inner color. And then we also then want to come up here and add a separator line. It's going to automatically number it, label it, and everything for you. So it's just going to add it right there. And we can come into here and look what our other things are called. So we can see this is simple border, and this is our only simple border in here. But we just want to get the color for this as well. So we just want to type in simple, brings us into here. And we just want to grab from color down to alpha, just like that, bring it in, and then change color to say border color. And very nicely, there we go. If we then increase this to be another, I'd say 4, right? So this is going to be now 9. Let's make it 8 just to double check ourselves. We can see one is left out. Perfect. Make it 9, and there we go. We have inner colors and border colors. Perfect. Let's come up here, add another label, and we're going to just add the thumb color. And we're going to do 4 because we know that it's going to only be taking in 4 controls for the 4 right there. And we're going to keep it visible. There we go. We want both of these to be open by default, so we're going to set these both to be 1. And for this one, we're going to come into here, look for thumb colors, not background 3. Oh, I didn't realize it would do this. I think if we just add stuff in here, it should be fine. I don't know why it pulled up the whole search menu. It's not happened before. But if we type in thumb, we should just get into thumb colors and start adding stuff in here just like we would before. Once again, you may see occasional inputs. I don't know why they're here. We shouldn't be. Just here sometime. And we can find what we're looking for, which we're looking for color again. So if we just remove the last letter of this and type it in again, it'll take us straight to here. These top 4. Bulk add them real quick, and there we go. Now, in our finished macro, this is actually supposed to be animated, but I forgot to animate the colors. but I showed you how to earlier, so all you'd have to do is just animate the colors yourself, and then the user just has simply animated labels right there, or simply animated controls right there for them to edit. Really quick, let me go ahead and add in another tab, and I'm gonna dump a bunch of controls onto this tab. Let's go and set this name to be animation, and we're gonna change icon to be this nice curly guy, which is our hue curves. We're gonna add that. We don't need to add a tooltip. Add that to our preview, and there we go. Now, if we remove this search, we're going to get our whole search bar back into here. As we scroll through it, we're going to start to see all of our modifiers. We want to take the controls right here, find whatever we want to have coming in first, which it looks like it's going to probably be the stuff on Transform 4, so the stuff for thumb scale. And we're going to come into here, grab the in and out, so if we want them to have control over if it actually animates, add those. We want them to have control over the start and end number and the rest number. If we have end number enabled, also have that. We want to then find the seconds options for animation length in and animation length out, along with in and out, our start and end for the other half down here as well. These down here we don't have to worry about. These are for the frames, which we did not change things to, but if we minimize this, ignore this window, I don't know why it's here. If we go back to all of our modifiers and just press convert to seconds, we're gonna have everything convert to the correct time frame for it to be easily used on the edit page. So if we convert all of these really quickly, we're gonna have it nice and easy for the user to use. We can also change these things for the single animations that happens. Okay, so now everything is set to seconds. We can happily add in our controls we have selected in here, which are gone because when we click out of here, they all go away. So we're going to select these again, select those and select those two. Once again, we're just using our control and clicking to click other controls, add those into there, and we're going to see we have those added in just fine. And we can dump in all of these controls, but I'm just going to dump in these first ones just to make it a little bit faster because I'm a little bit running out of time, because I've been talking more than I was hoping to in this video. And we can add for both the inputs and outputs of animation. You can just change this to say in and out, and this one can just say out and out, so we can tell which one's which. Super easy. You can also add in on each of these controls nodes, they have a label that has the name of whatever you named your modifiers. And you can add this, but bear in mind, it's gonna bring in a label hide number. You can remove this just by selecting it, removing it like that, and also remove this checkbox for is hider. And you can also remove the number there because that's not really needed either. But now it's going to come in as just a simple label. If we click this, we can also go up and down with these arrows right here. So we can move this up through our labels right here, or through our controls right here, until we hit the top, and then we can call it good there. Now everything below it is going to just be listed as this is what this is all for. Super, super nice. If we come on up here, we can change our name now. We can just call this example macro or thumb like button macro, whatever, I don't know. Name it whatever you want. And then you can come on up here and we're just gonna save the clipboard for a quick test real quick. Wait for it to load, it'll save to clipboard, wait for this thing to go away. If we hop over to another comp and we paste in what we have on our clipboard, we're gonna see we have example. And we have a few things not quite right, but you get the idea. A couple of things may just need to be changed in the future. And let's make sure that these numbers are correct. I'm just gonna recount these to make sure everything's right. Okay, I did have a miscount. I don't know how I messed it up that badly, but this should be 17, and it will not add anything else to it. Yeah, so that was why that was wrong. Let's recount this as well. Okay, this is not something that you should ever be messing with, because this may cause problems in the future. If you ever change anything after these borders, you may start breaking stuff. But if something goes wrong, any information after this, you guys can always update this information and it will actually change things with the export. So if we look at this, I made this actual label when we were on the wrong node. So I just went in here and just changed this to be the correct node. When we go to export this now, it's going to grab that control from the controls node after it's created it, and it's going to use this on the export. So now with everything back in here looking good, with everything still selected, let's, instead of going to clipboard, let's show you how to save this as a macro. So we can go export macro as, it's going to bring up a nice window here. It's going to bring in our name of our macro right here. We can choose a thumbnail for it if you have an image already set out for its icon. If you have any loaders in here, any loader nodes with images stored inside of them, you can export those with this simple checkbox right here. I don't have any, so I'm going to uncheck that. And if you don't know what to do with the files or file after exporting it, you can export a README to explain what to do with what you have. But I'm going to, once again, uncheck that. You can make this macro into a group or a macro operator with just this checkbox right here. And over here, we can rename our outputs and inputs. I'm just going to rename this to just say output to make it really easy on us. We can then make this into a DRFX with this checkbox right up here. And we also get access to new controls nicely right here. Let's change macro type. We want this to be an edit page. We want this to be an edit page macro, so we want to change this to edit. This also brings in new controls over here. We want this to be a title, so we're going to make this under titles. And we're also then going to make a folder for our company, Fusion Pixel Studios. And then we're also going to add another folder in here just for beginner's guide. If you want to make multiple other folders in here to make it even more organized or make it even more deep inside of the structure, you can always add in another slash in here and keep separating things out from there. Super nice. Now if we press export to, it's going to flash the comp a few times, bring up a nice window for us to choose where to export to. I'm going to go into my documents and I have a folder for DaVinci macros. And I'm just going to make a folder in here for test just to show it off to you guys. And then once we get into this folder, we can just press save and it exports the macro, tells us it's exported. It closes that. Super cool. We can close out of this, minimize this, and now let's take a look at this macro. So I'm in the same comp we have this example in, which we can take another look at this to see how this looked. Looks a little bit rough, but if we remove this now, and let's take a look at this macro in documents, my macros, under test, we have an edit folder, we have titles, we have Fusion Pixel Studios, we have beginner's guide, and then we have our example.setting. This is perfect. If we drag this into here now, we get a macro file and we have these are organized correctly. Everything is looking really nicely. We have everything with all of the correct spacings. Perfect. If we set this to preview out, we can still see we have all of the contents that are animated really nicely. Most of this video is me just talking about making the actual macro in the Fusion comp, not making it as a usual macro when actually making the UI. Watch this video right over here to actually see the breakdown of the differences between this method and the traditional method shown off in the long video and the full part series earlier in this month. Go ahead and check out the new macro creator down below, get it for yourself or try out the free version. Also, if you're new to macros or you feel like you just need the extra boost with your macro experience, you can also check out the Pro Macro Creator Community, or also sometimes called the Support Plan, which allows you to get access to a Discord with a bunch of like-minded developers. It lets you get access to calls with me that are directly uploaded to Notion with summaries and videos for easy access for reviewing information as group meetings or individual meetings. Check that out down in the description below. You can either get that from Ko-fi or my website. Hope you enjoy it. Also check out the tutorial video, which is similar to this one, but just going over some basic introduction stuff for exporting it without making a macro at all. That's going to be it from me. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you had a great time learning how to use the new macro creator and how to make macros as a whole. But I hope you had a great time. Happy animating!